the economy is very poor. A bigger, more expansive government that likes to give people extra help that they don't need, it just doesn't make any sense. And at a time, again, when the economy is bad, I think we need to think about what we can do to ensure that money gets back to the people so that they have extra cash to spend, and that the municipal government has a responsibility to do what they can do to make that happen. Next, I would like to talk about the concept of government manipulation of an economy. A perfect example of this is when you decide to have a business come here and you promote them. In terms of function of government, I don't think it's appropriate for you to do that, and so I would here like today to propose before the public and before you an ordinance. And this ordinance would say that it would ban the municipal government from promoting or rewarding businesses in a meeting or in any governing event whatsoever. Next, I would like to state that we need to have talk about lower taxes and our budget. Make the point that over the last 15 years, there's been nothing but tax increases, and you have blamed at certain times the energy tax receipts for jacking up the property taxes year after year after year, but that's, since you've been doing it before you received the energy tax receipts in 2008, back in the 90s you were jacking up the taxes, again, consecutively. So I think if you really want to make East Windsor an attractive place for businesses or for residents, considering how high property taxes are statewide and the fact that we have also the highest debt per capita in the state of New Jersey, it would be in our interest if we would start consecutively lowering the property tax. And I know that's not easy, but it still has to be done, and it's possible to achieve that goal. Now I have a few questions. You can write them down and answer them after I speak. I know that's your preferred style, so I appreciate that. That's fine. My first question is, when was the last time East Windsor had 3 consecutive years of property tax cuts? My next question is, and this is about the budget. I want to ask about legal services and costs. And the salaries and wages says $26,000 we spent on that, and other expenses $65,000. I would like more transparency on exactly what those other services are. I'd like to ask why we needed to increase animal control by $5,000. I'd like to ask why the manager's office had to be increased by $100,000. I'd like to ask why an additional $5,000 for the financial administration. I'd like to ask why the employee group insurance is up almost $300,000. I'd like to ask why we reduced police salaries by $60,000. I don't know if we lost an officer or not, if that was why. We cut their salary, or we cut payment to their salary, but there is a $10,000 increase for general administration and an additional $9,000 for training. I'd like to know why that's the case. A few other quick comments on this topic. Just a reminder that please, when you talk about property taxes, not to be misleading by saying, oh, it's the state's fault that we pay high property tax. It's not really the state's fault that we pay high property tax. It's the fault is, I mean, there are several factors. I mean, inflation is a major factor, but also over 15 years of property tax increase, property tax increase, property tax increase, property tax increase. That's your choice as you go through the budget and allocate money. Okay, so next I want to talk about debt reduction. First of all, you made a comment the last time that I was here. You said, quote, what you, Sean, call debt, I call financial planning. To be clear, I asked you how much debt East Windsor was in, and you told me East Windsor was in $20 million of debt. So you call the debt, and I call the debt. You choose to use the debt to allocate to your idea of financial planning. And mind you, that's at a time when the economy is bad. I remind you of what just happened in Detroit. If you think that the municipal bonding market is not going to be insecure at this time, I think that would be a bad judgment. There is a possibility of a crisis, and even if there were no crisis in this regard, of course we should absolutely be protective of the possibility. That's what a government's job is to protect against danger. Next I want to talk about red light cameras. As you've probably seen in the paper, the people hate it. It's a very unfair policy. The reason why it's unfair is because as you switch the yellow lights to the red lights, people go really fast and they don't have enough time, and so you end up issuing them a ticket and taking their money, but you didn't give them enough time to stop, so that's not really fair. The other point is that it's actually hazardous if people try to stop really short, and it could cause an accident that way because they're so afraid of having to pay you money for a bad policy. Next, a comment about economic development. You know, this is something I'm very passionate about. I'm very passionate about it because the economy is seriously struggling. This recession is nowhere near over, especially with the Federal Reserve continually inflating our money and the president constantly touting government stimulus at a time when that's proven not to work. So just in general, government doesn't have a good track record with economic development. That's a fact. If you want to talk about who develops an economy, I'm going to give you a list of names, and it will stand as concrete evidence of how the economy is developed. So these names are as follows: Rockefeller, Edison, Ford, the Wright brothers, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg. And what did all these people have in common? The government didn't commission them and say, you must do this, or we think you should do this. These guys said, I've got an idea. So freeing up an economy to let people do that makes a lot more sense than you posting suggestions to the community of how you think the community should look. That's not your job, and it's also a waste of your effort, and it's just not a good idea overall. And just one last point about economic development. The mastermind, some people would claim, of economic development, he used this as his idea of how to improve an economy. It was his theory. His name is Joseph Stalin, and let's all understand exactly what happened. It amounted in famine, it amounted in genocide. So let's not take that path, please. And let's get rid of the economic development in East Windsor. Let's slash that $5,000 and put it towards property tax relief, please. And I just want to, in conclusion, just review the importance of understanding what the function of government is. A government, that's the institution that protects people from an emergency. Those are needs that must absolutely be met. Whereas special help, this concept of special help that liberals and Democrats and socialists believe is the way to save things, it doesn't help when you give someone something they don't need. It doesn't help them grow, it doesn't help them learn, it doesn't help them develop. And lastly, I just want to say that I'd like to point out the fact that there's no sense of vision for the future of East Windsor. And I think that these town council meetings should be a time where we talk about where we see the future of East Windsor and the steps and the goals that it will take to get there. And so I would like to propose for you a few goals that I believe will make for a much, excuse me, I'm talking. Excuse me. It's very strange how every time I ask you for an opinion, you don't want to give it, and I have to try to beg with you to talk to me, but when I talk, you interrupt me. Excuse me and let me finish, please. I will wrap up. Thank you very much. So first of all, let's talk about some goals for our community. First of all, a respectful town council, one that does not interrupt the public, one does not tell the public that they shouldn't talk, one that also responds to the public and encourages discussion so that we have a healthy community that embraces ideas and understands where a community should go in the future. That's the first goal that I propose for you. Second, I would like to see a fiscally sound East Windsor where we reduce the debt, where we reduce property taxes, and we make this a place where people feel confident about being and living. And the government should be more efficient. Instead of worrying about things like red light cameras, excuse me, and worrying about economic development, let's stop throwing things. Let's stop throwing things on the internet, and instead just concentrate on really good protection. Excuse me, protection is relevant. There are 27 murders in 8 months in the city of Trenton. 27 murders. That is something that absolutely matters to us. Trenton is next to Hamilton. There have been murders in Hamilton. Trenton is also next to Ewing. There have been murders in Ewing. When does that leak into Hamilton, into Robbinsville, and into East Windsor? When do we start thinking about the concept of protection and looking at what's really important? And next, I just want to, again, one word. I want to finish with one word, and that word is protection. Thank you very much for interrupting me, and that's all I have to say at this time.